We got a good show for you here tonight. A little later, Maverick reporter Sydney Zion will be here, and we have surprises. 2 weeks ago, my first guest went 15 rounds against the great Larry Holmes for the WBC title, heavyweight title. Outside of the ring, he has earned a reputation as one of the brightest and funniest boxers since Muhammad Ali. Welcome, please, Randall Tex Cobb. Thanks for being here. Do you come to New York often? You've been here a lot?
No, I don't. I try to steer clear of here.
But you like it deep down inside, I'm guessing.
Oh, no, inside, I hate it.
Oh. Now, you don't, this is 10 days ago. You look in pretty good shape. You apparently weren't hurt too badly from the fight, huh?
Well, certainly the reports of my deaths have been exaggerated.
Yeah. Did you see the videotape of the fight?
Yes, I did.
And now that you've had nearly 2 weeks to reflect on it, what do you think?
I'm not sure, but I think I lost.
If you were to fight Larry Holmes again, what would you do differently if you would do anything differently?
Well, I would certainly do something different. You can bet your butt on that. No, there's a lot of things. I made several strategical, technical errors. I very basically just had a bad night. I didn't get any of my offense to go. My basics weren't looking good. I wasn't executing correctly. I made a lot of mistakes, but I made them going forward.
And you went 15 rounds. Was this must have been just exhausting, wasn't it?
Oh, well, it got my attention.
Was it during the fight or afterward? Howard Cosell, who was doing the ringside commentary, announced that he was never going to cover a heavyweight fight again. Did you hear that?
Yes, I've heard that since the fight. I didn't know it at the time. Otherwise, I'd have had two parties.
Did you talk to Howard before the fight?
Yeah, we spoke briefly. We spoke in an elevator, and he told me that he thought it was exceptionally distasteful that he had to work during the holidays and stay away from his loved ones, his family. I told him I could understand and appreciate his point of view. You know. I got the thank you note from his wife.
Did you, good heavens, did you visit a hypnotist before this fight, or have you ever gone to a hypnotist?
I saw a boy by the name of Brian out of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Just Brian the hypnotist?
Brian Grodner was his name.
And what was the purpose of that?
Well, I thought it might possibly give me an edge on focusing and concentration, things like that. Those are really important aspects of the fight game, and the man that usually maintains his concentration under the most direct or serious of negative reinforcement, that man usually does real well. That man usually wins.
Yeah. Were you able to use any of those techniques in the fight?
Oh, I could concentrate like hell. I just couldn't fight that night. Concentration, I had my mind right. I was dead ahead. I knew this next right hand was just going to kill him. I knew that.
Now, in all seriousness, do you think that if you were to fight him again, you could do better than you did the first time?
Oh, hell, there's no doubt in my mind that I can beat the man. I had a bad night. That's all it was. It wasn't at all that he was so vastly superior to me that I, didn't need to shine the shoes or anything like that. That's not the case. The case is I just had a real bad night. Those things happen. Shucks, I ain't gonna cry about that.
Yeah. Is there a chance that there's going to be a rematch, do you think?
Larry told me unquestionably no.
So it's tough to be optimistic in
well, it certainly is the kind of thing that doesn't promise well for the future.
Yeah. Did you get hurt physically? I mean...
No, I've got the same sterling features that I started with. Look like a catcher's mitt.
Oh, here is the... when was this taken, Randy?
Oh, that. That does look cute, doesn't it? Well, hell, he is the heavyweight champion, Larry's a very fine fighter. Got a good left hand. Yeah. You'll notice that there by my eye. There's my left eye.
Now, people are accustomed to the post-fight interview, seeing boxers with the sunglasses, and you did not choose to put them on, huh?
Hell, it was nighttime.
Yeah, that makes perfectly good sense. Sure, nighttime. Good heavens. Now, what did you do right after the fight?
Oh, same thing I always do after a fight. I prayed and I thanked the Lord that everybody got through it safe, and I went out and partied.
Yeah. What is the nature of the partying you were doing?
Hard, fast, and regular.
A lot of folks, by yourself, just a few friends?
Just a few friends. We were limited to, I don't know, 50, 60 guys. We sat down, laughed and lied, and carried on, had a good time.
Yeah. Did the next day you feel the effects of the fight?
What are you talking about?
I mean, were you stiff? Were you sore? Were you?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, you've got to expect some kind of lactic acid buildup. You know, if you're going to sit around and play for 15 rounds, you've got to expect some kind of joint discomfort, some kind of muscle discomfort, stiffness the next day.
Yeah. But overall, you feel pretty good.
Oh, hell, I feel fine, man. There wasn't nothing serious about that stuff.
Now, you've also done the full contact karate.
Yes.
Ranked 7th in the world in that sport,
Yeah.
and you have done some time as a bouncer, and a very colorful career, which we're going to get to here.
I don't get along with many people, David.
No, you're a very nice man. I sense that you're a nice guy, aren't you?
And I knew you'd say that, Dave. Quick as I got within arm's reach.
We have to pause here. We'll be right back to find out how nice a man he really is. Gentleman is Randy Tex Cobb. What do you prefer being called?
Sir.
Sir. Now,
Randall's fine.
Randall. Before the fight, there was, I guess, in the newspaper, Don King came to you, the promoter, right?
Yes.
And he said, "I'm sorry, Randy, you, for some reason, you're going to get $200,000 less than we originally decided you were going to get." Now, what was that?
That was a cut in pay.
Based on what was the cut levied upon you?
Well, he had thought that possibly I should have been in there a few days earlier as in accordance to the contract, which I definitely did make some provision for as far as talking to the newsman and trying to promote the fight and things like this. He cut my purse because of that. I don't know why he cut Larry's purse. Don King was just interested in making some money, about like everybody else.
Now, what does that do to you going in, knowing that you're going in for the purpose of not only hoping to get the heavyweight title, but also you're trying to make a pretty decent payday for yourself? Does that affect you as a fighter going in?
Well, I don't think that realizing inside that possibly the promoter of the fight and the premier promoter of boxing is a lying, thieving sleazebag, something like that is not going to affect me personally. I mean, hell, I got to fight.
Yeah. Have you heard from Don since?
Don hadn't called.
Yeah, he'll be calling now. I have a feeling now you get a call from Don. Now tell me about the full contact karate. I've seen a little bit of it on television, but it looks awful.
Well, thank you, Dave. Yeah, you summarized a whole sport in one simple word.
I don't, but I'm from a spectator standpoint. I can't imagine myself doing that.
I can't either, Dave. I can't imagine. I don't picture you there. No, it's hell, fighting's fighting. It ain't no big deal. It's just so you expand the rules a bit. And
now, what are the rules of full contact karate?
Last man standing.
The last man standing.
No, I was just kidding. This ain't no Hong Kong death match. They don't let you do anything serious. They don't let you elbow. They don't take the gloves off. Serious things, Dave, in a fight are things that are self-defensive or life-protecting. Things like, taking out a man's eyes, breaking his knees,
now,
turning his throat.
How many points do you get for that first one?
I don't know, but it's a favored technique, not only of the going for the eyes is a favorite technique, not only of the karate people, but the boxers are real good for that.
Well, we're using thumbs and so forth. Now, you talked about, we'll get back to the full contact karate in a second, but you mentioned that Larry Holmes was good with his thumbs. What does that mean?
Well, that means that he's a heavyweight champion, and as a result, he's going to use everything that he can use to do it. And believe me, this is not, Larry Holmes is not cornered the market on using thumbs. I've seen some real masters of the
well, show me what you're talking about, but don't really do it, of course.
Of course not.
These are just demonstrations for the kids at home.
If you want to thumb your little brother, pretend like you're punching him like this. And when you get there, pull your thumb out and stick it in his eye.
Now,
no further than, say, maybe about the second socket ought to work. For you kids at home, that's right about to here.
You know, when you did that, it was like an eclipse. Kind of a shadow just came right over here. Yeah, this will be interesting. But now you're not saying that Larry does that on purpose. It's more his boxing style that he just got his thumbs up, right? Or are you saying he does it on purpose?
I'm saying that anybody can accidentally thumb you.
Yeah. Now, when you get thumbed in the ring, does it ever go through your mind, well, I'll retaliate with a maneuver that would be a foul?
Well, not really, because that's just another way to break your concentration. Whether he hits you low or whether he elbows you, butts you, thumbs you, anything like that, talks to you, any number of different ways. But what he's doing is he's breaking your concentration, if he's effective. Now, personally, if I was going to open up the rules, I wouldn't thumb somebody in the eye. I'd break his knees.
We're gonna just pause here for station identification.
Sure.
We'll be right back. Tex Cobb and I, and of course Sidney Zion. Come on back. Hello and welcome back to the program. Randall, Tex Cobb is here tomorrow night. This will be interesting, exciting, both. Comedian Bob Nelson and musician Iggy Pop. That's tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go back to the full contact karate. For people who have never seen it, just describe it, what the sport is, what's legal, what's not legal.
It's basically an idea where you're taking karate and you're putting pads on your feet and your hands and you're limiting yourself to, again, pretty much the punching out of the boxing technique, and you're opening up the rules some, letting people kick each other in the head and shoulders and lower parts of the thorax, and just, you know, it's just actually boxing, except that you're using your feet and you're kicking as well as boxing.
Yeah. The kind of question that comes up about this stuff, could Larry Holmes, being the best in his profession, beat the best in this other sport?
Well, I don't know that Larry Holmes could. I don't know that he could. Larry Holmes very probably could tear his head off if he caught him right, you know, because boxers are very efficient, very effective punchers, and they have a really good understanding of combat. Right now, the sport of full contact karate and kickboxing, as it was, is going through a real change. They're going through a real metamorphosis, and I think they're going to be every bit as competitive as the boxers in time to come.
Mm. Do you ever see it catching on like Little League Baseball?
I don't really know, Dave. I hadn't thought about it quite in that context. Of course, it'd be hell to fight in those little caps.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Now, tell me about being a bouncer. Is that, it can't be, how did you get started becoming a bouncer?
Well, I think it was due to my incredible educational level, possibly due to the tremendous amount of stability that I have as an individual, and the fact that I like to move a lot. Mm-hmm. And
I read an article about you, and I believe it was Sports Illustrated, maybe a month ago, before the fight at any rate, and described a fight in which you came to the defense of was it a Philadelphia sports writer?
I was a real close friend of mine, Pete Dexter. He actually does happen to be a writer, which is, you know, nothing I'm going to hold against a boy. Uh-huh. And no, Pete's a real fine friend of mine and a good man, you know, and yes, Well,
now, how did the trouble begin? Because it doesn't seem like a writer, mild-mannered perhaps, going to make a lot of trouble, you know?
Well, I'd like to say that Pete just had a problem with negotiations with some gentlemen from a certain part of the town, and so he asked me if I could help him talk and talk to these fellas about being able to communicate and verbally, and I agreed that possibly I could help the men to verbally communicate. These gentlemen, on the other hand, were not that adept at verbal communication. Not to say they weren't adept, just that verbal communication was not their long suit.
Yeah. So you just kicked the crap out of them, huh? Pretty much it, I guess.
Well, like I said, negotiations were open. They opened up there on the corner of 24th and Lombard, and these gentlemen definitely came prepared to negotiate. They all had crowbars, long pieces of iron. They had some bats there, but you just don't see that many long pieces of iron. These suckers must all worked at a junkyard or something. I mean, long pieces with tape and hand grips on them, little notches cut in them.
Good heavens. So these guys, they were for real, obviously.
They were sincere.
Yeah.
They were real sincere about what they were doing. They weren't very well trained, thank the Lord, because if they were, they'd have killed us. They'd have killed us both.
Well, you got a busted arm out of the deal, didn't you?
I had a broke arm, and Pete got in some serious problems. He ended up in the hospital for a bit.
He's all right?
But oh yeah, he's fine. Pete's doing real well. But you know, hell, when you're gonna scrimmage 30 guys that have iron, hell, all the smart money's on them.
Yeah. Now, you were in a movie, The Champ, with John Voight and Ricky Schroeder, and you can't fight forever, of course. Do you have any interest in doing that full time when you hang up the gloves, as they say?
Well, I certainly don't intend to get a gold watch in boxing, but I can guarantee you, I don't know that the movies will be a tremendous future for me, because I seem to have a real problem in doing real well in a subjective field, and Hollywood is very, very subjective.
What do you mean exactly by that?
I mean, if you don't kiss the right ass, boy, you don't get no girl.
You communicated that pretty well. Gee, you're a terrific guy. It was a pleasure meeting you. And,
well, I certainly was real glad to be here on your last show. And,
good luck to you, Tex. Nice meeting you. Thank you very much. Randall Tex Cobb, ladies and gentlemen. Very nice man. Very nice. All right, we're up to letter number 4 here. Dear Dave, I love your show and never miss it because you've become a sort of hero to me. Well, this is very nice of you to say. My roommate, however, does not think so highly of you and says Letterman's no hero. I mean, how much could he bench press? Well, I said that you could bench press plenty, maybe 250 or 300 pounds. I would like to see you bench on your show, Dave, and prove to my roommate you're no wimp. Admiringly, David Todd and Don Outerdown. I have a jacket made of that stuff, as a matter of fact. Comes from Southern Connecticut State University. Well, David, if your friend thinks I'm a wimp, that's his problem. I don't feel I have to prove my masculinity.
Dave, you gotta come quick. It's Tex Cobb. He's trapped.
Trapped?
Come on.
Oh,
you gotta come quick.
He's trapped. Well, let's, for heaven's sakes, thank you very much, Paul, for coming. What the hell happened back here? All right, here. Gentlemen, please. Come on, back off. Let me give it a try. All right, you all right, Tex?
I'm all right.
Okay, let's just... Oh, yeah. Oh, there you go. Wow. There you go. All right, now... Oh. Get ready to pull your leg out. Oh.
Well, thanks to you, Dave. I don't think anybody can lift that boulder.
Well, it only weighs, what, about 200, 300 pounds or something like that?
More like 5.
More like 5. Pretty painful under there, was it, Tex?
Yeah, I sense the shadowy spectrum of death. How about the specter of death? How about me doing this shit right? I sense the shadowy specter of death looming large.
Yeah.
Why don't I read this stuff? Yes, I sense the shadowy specter of...
You like this bit, Dave?
It's all right.
It's moving. It's moving. Yes, I sense the shadowy specter of death beckoning to me. Enlarge that damn sign. We're fucking up there. Okay. Yes, yeah, I sense the shadowy specter of death beckoning to me, promising me the sweet relief of everlasting nothingness. I'm glad you came along.
Well, so...
You want to try it again, Dave?
No.
Oh, too much of this is...
Yeah. That's what you were sensing, and I sensed that this will never see the light of day. Well, we'll be right back, folks. We have a wonderful program. Phyllis Diller is here, and plenty more. Thank you, folks. My next guest is one of only 3 boxers to last 15 rounds against the great Larry Holmes. We have some videotape of this man in action. He is also a full-contact karate fighter. And this is him on the left. Ooh, boy, does that look unpleasant. He will be fighting Big John Jackson for the U.S. Super Heavyweight title on NBC Sports World Sunday, May 6th. Please welcome back to this program, Mr. Randall Tex Cobb. Who are the other 2 fighters who went 15 rounds with Larry Holmes, you know?
Trevor Burbick and Ken Norton.
So, oh boy, you're in good company then, aren't you?
Well, I hope.
Yeah. Now, when was that fight?
Which one?
The one with you and Larry Holmes.
That was 1982, around November.
That's right after Thanksgiving,
Day.
wasn't it? Now, have you boxed in any fight since then?
Yeah, I've had 2 boxing matches, won them both, and a couple exhibitions in karate.
Yeah.
Movie, maybe 1 or 2 cold beers in between. I don't remember exactly.
All right. Well, let me ask you about the videotape there we saw. Now, what are we looking at? That's full contact karate, right?
Yes.
Now, what are the rules for that thing? Are there any rules?
Yes, there are rules. You don't get to break somebody's knees. They don't like that. They're not real crazy about you tearing out eyes or ripping out throats. They like to put gloves on you so that it's not real dangerous. They don't let you elbow or anything serious. They just let you kick each other in the head.
So it's for pansies, is what you're saying.
Well, a few of us candy butts like myself and other individuals, they'll raise a ruckus for you.
Now, comparing this to professional, traditional fist fighting, is this more dangerous, the full contact karate boxing fighting, than just regular fist fighting?
Depends on the man. If you got somebody that can solid scrimmage with hand or foot, either one can be dangerous.
I see.
You know, it depends on the guy, and if he's got legitimate foot technique, if he can kick you in the head and break your jaw, that's dangerous.
That's legitimate foot technique, though, isn't it? That's right.
That's serious.
Now, if you had to take the best man, best heavyweight in full contact karate, and put him up against, say, Larry Holmes, who would win that?
Well, I think I would.
Yeah. Really?
Well, I think I'm the best man in karate. Of course, everybody has that kind of opinion of themselves. But I think if I got a chance to kick Larry instead of just having to punch at him, I think it could have gone a lot different.
Now, you've won 5 of your matches by knockout with your feet, right?
Yeah, this was before I got into boxing. I was in full contact karate when it was really in its infancy. And I mean, if you want to call 5 matches and 5 first-round KOs, which I did with my feet.
First-round knockouts.
Well, all you got to do is land one.
Yeah.
Doesn't take many.
And where do you land one that'll?
I like the mouth.
But see, this sounds like a terribly brutal sport. This just sounds frightening as hell.
Well, Dave, they don't pay me to speak 4 languages. Yeah. They made English work just lately.
Now, before you got into professional fighting, you had a pretty good background as kind of a hobby fighter, didn't you? You were.
Well, I was a sporadic individual that only.
You worked as a bouncer, right?
Well, everybody got to make a living, Dave.
Yeah. Now, where did you work as a bouncer?
Oh, most of the Southwest.
One bouncer for the whole Southwest. That ain't bad. That's a tough guy. Got his own region.
I worked several bars out of El Paso and Albuquerque, Arizona.
Is Albuquerque a tough town?
Albuquerque's pretty serious. They got about 4 or 5 good karate studios there that turn out some semi-serious individuals. They got football players there. They have bikers. They have pachucos. They have several individuals of outstandingly bad attitude that like to like to frequent bars and test the local heat.
Now, is that a phenomenon? People actually go out on a Saturday night and at 5 in the afternoon when they're getting ready, they know for sure they're going to end up in a fight?
No. If they get lucky, they might, get laid. But if they don't, then they're going to get in a fight.
Yeah. There's hardly anything in this show we can save, you know? All right. So bouncing is a tough way to make a living. Boxing is a tough way, and then full contact karate seems like even the toughest. But when you were boxing primarily, and maybe you use it for full contact karate, you went to a hypnotist, didn't you?
No, actually, the only time I used a hypnotist was for the Larry Holmes fight, and that was to try to control the bleeding, because, white boys bleed a bit. And as a result, I figured that if I could get somebody that had some understanding, they had some tests done where they could cut up to 70% of the bleeding in dental patients with hypnotists. And so I figured, shucks, 70% of the bleeding down, that hardly lose a quart of blood that way.
Are you known as a bleeder?
Well, I'm a white boy. That's a good indication initially.
Mm-hmm. And now, what suggestion do they give you that will curb the bleeding?
They tell me not to bleed.
That seems to do the trick.
Well, you got to keep things simple for a fighter, Dave.
Yeah.
You might have noticed.
Now,
no big words, nothing.
Did that seem to make a difference for you, actually, that technique?
Well, it was real hard for me to tell. I don't think that the blood could get out through the swelling. So it's...
All right. Now you also did some other techniques under hypnosis about your hand speed, right?
Well, I'd like to try to do some hand speed, improve my hand speed. Yeah.
What was that? What were you using to visualize improving your hand speed?
Well, they had me thinking about jets and bullets and things like that, and certainly you can tell how much good it did.
Yeah, but still in all, going 15 rounds with the heavyweight champion of the world, that is very impressive.
Well, the trick is to do it going forward.
Now, you're doing movies now? You're in?
No, not.
You were in movies?
Well, I was.
But you're not going to be in more movies?
Well, I'm not saying it couldn't happen again, Dave. I mean, shucks, I might get on this show again. You never know. I mean, the future's uncertain.
Oh, I think you're dreaming now, Tex. No. Wait a minute. Before you go to taking off your shoes, I'm just teasing you. Now, you're welcome here anytime. But you were in, was it Uncommon Valor?
Yes, I was.
Now, did you enjoy that? You got a pretty good, some reviews, nice reviews, didn't you?
Well, some people said some nice things, which I'm grateful for. But like I said, I don't feel like it's going to be a real long-term kind of commitment for me.
Now, why is that?
Well, you seem to have to get along with a lot more people in a movie set than you do in a boxing ring.
And that's difficult for you?
Well, it ain't bothering me none. It's the rest of them that have the trouble.
Oh, I get it. Okay. Now, but you're teasing because it seems like you're a natural. You're a very amiable personality, outgoing, magnetic, charismatic. Seems like you would have a nice career in film. So I think you ought to be seriously thinking about this.
I think you ought to work as my agent. Charismatic, nice looking. Gosh, I like that.
Okay. Now you're going to be competing in this deal, right? The super heavyweight title on NBC Sports World, Sunday, May 6th, right?
Yes.
How are you going to come out of that?
Well, I hope unscathed and the winner.
All right. Well, good luck to you, Tex. Come back and tell us how it went, will you?
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you again. Randall Tex Cobb. We'll be back with the Mercy's Uniform Fashion Show.
Against Larry Holmes, I couldn't use my feet. But when I take on Big John Jackson for the PKA Super Heavyweight Championship, I'll be swinging leather from the floor up, darling.
You know, someone pointed out that to get married like that, you got to have a license and probably blood tests, too. So this was no surprise wedding. You know? Well, we'll ask Tex. He'll know about that.
Yeah, that's Tex.
Our next guest was a heavyweight boxer who, in his career, was known to take quite a few punches to the head. Some say perhaps one too many. He can currently be seen, he's acting now, and he's currently in the new Eddie Murphy motion picture, The Golden Child, and on January 16th, he opens in critical condition with Richard Pryor. Please welcome Randall Tex Cobb. Good to see you. How you doing? Good. Have a seat. You know, I think Randy, the last time you were here was like a week before some kickboxing match you were in on NBC here. Remember that?
Yeah.
Are you still doing that stuff?
Well, not right now, but I might take a shot.
But that was like 12 or 15 rounds of punching and kicking, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's tough to do, isn't it?
It beats working days.
Now, tell me about that. You were, I guess, you're in the fighting terminology, you were referred to as a catcher, right? When you were boxing, is that true, fair, or?
Well, I wasn't referred to as a brilliant technician, Dave.
But a catcher means a guy who's willing to take all you can give him, right?
Well, I guess in the ring it might be considered a catcher, and baseball is something else. But
yeah, I know. The category is boxing, Tex. Boxing for 50.
These are trick questions, aren't they, Dave?
Do you have any idea the ratio of how many you threw to how many that you took?
Well, I threw a bunch. I know that.
Yeah.
It seemed like I caught a bunch more, though.
Yeah. What was the hardest hit you ever took? Do you remember?
Oh, God, yes. Ernie Shavers hit you hard enough to break your legs. I mean, well, this guy hits you so hard, you're just amazed you're still alive.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you really can't believe that. When he hits you, you think, well, this should have killed me, man. Then he hits you again, and you think, well, I'm son of a gun. He's still hitting me. I'm still alive.
Is there pain immediately, or is it a jarring, the likes of which I wouldn't understand?
Well, I could explain this to you in terms that would be painfully apparent, Dave, if that would help.
No,
I mean,
no, that's all right.
No, there is a noticeable immediate reaction, yes, both in the jarring sensation along with the concussion, not to mention little things like enormous pain, just immediately.
Were you ever knocked out in a fight?
I've been knocked down a couple times, but I was never out. I was always asking for more.
Yeah. You went, was it 15 rounds with Larry Holmes?
Every second of it.
15 rounds.
Walking forward.
Uh-huh. And
catching.
Yeah. But he wasn't able to knock you down, was he?
No. I had him. I just ran out of time, Dave. You know. Sure, I lost the first 15 rounds, but when we was through, he was a whimpering pup. You know, just a shell of his former self.
So if it had been like a 40-round fight...
40 to 50-round fight, at the palm of my hand, Dave. His hands couldn't have taken much more, I know that.
Hey, but you made a lot of money for that fight, didn't you? That was a good payday for all of the work.
Well, God's own truth is my managers made a lot more. The promoter made some good money. I got drunk, yeah.
When the fight was over, what did you say in the ring? What were your first words after the fight?
The first thing I said after the fight was, let's party, because the work was done.
Yeah. And did you have a pretty good party afterward?
Like I said, the work was done, and it was a good payday.
Yeah.
And yes, sir, I laughed for a while, Dave.
And the money, were you able to hang on to it and invest?
Yeah, Dave, that's... No, Dave, I didn't hang on to a lot of the money. As a matter of fact, I hit just right here, Dave.
No, you didn't. You're doing real well in your acting career. But explain what the breakdown is, because when they say a $500,000 purse, that's a huge sum of money. But tell folks where it goes and how, in a case like this, you probably got the short end of the deal.
Well, it starts out originally as a third of the gross versus, a certain amount of money, which, of course, my managers decided that was way too much money, and they made a cut in pay, and they made a this and that and whatever they did. But I had to sign a different contract the night before the fight due to the class individuals that I was involved with.
So you felt that you were coerced into doing this?
Well, you don't make me do a whole lot I don't want to do.
Oh, I see. So you knew what you were doing then?
Well, it was a situation where I could take a shot, and I had a chance to get 45 minutes of Larry Holmes' time.
Yeah. So it was a title fight too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Well,
That was the heavyweight title of the world, and that's real important to me at the time. So those things meant a whole lot. And of course, I know it sounds like a lot of money, but when you figure you get the government gets half of that, your manager gets besides what he stole, he gets a third. Then you got a trainer gets 10%.
Yeah.
There's training expenses, and you got to have a party after the fight.
But doesn't that stink that the guy who was in there with his blood and his bones is the guy who ends up with a small pile when they end up counting it?
Well, if you're the guy in there bleeding, it really does suck the bag.
Yeah. How do you like being an actor? You're, I think, a natural performer. You're doing pretty well at it, aren't you?
Well, I was very lucky to get the chance to dodge work this way, but I don't credit it to anything. It's particularly noble. I mean, you start out as a little kid, lying to your parents. You progress to lying to your teachers at school. You sure as hell lie to your boss. I mean, you lie to your wife. You've always lied to your friends. I mean,
of course, if you can't lie to your friends, who can you lie to?
Well, I mean, I don't figure it's a real hard thing to lie to a camera.
Yeah.
I mean, you ain't even got to make up the lie. They tell you what to say.
Yeah. Have you taken any acting lessons?
Oh, well, I started out as a kid lying to my parents.
I see. Do you find that it can't possibly be difficult work after what you've done prior to this?
Well, I looked at it as a situation where, let's talk about the negative reinforcement involved in that. And in the last job I had, if you didn't do it just exactly right, you got hit in the mouth.
That's right.
And in this kind of job, the worst thing that can happen, I mean, if everything in the whole world goes wrong, take two. Now, that may not sound like,
That's right.
It was a big deal to me at the time, though, once I figured out that secret of the temple.
That's right. What happened to your college career? I know you got tossed out or suspended from college, right?
Well, there were series of misunderstandings. But
what was the last episode?
Ooh, the last one?
The big one.
The one that got the most press was a minor misunderstanding with another dorm.
What were you doing?
Well, they were shooting fireworks, endangering both life and limb of my dormitory, and in response, I didn't have any fireworks, and so I got a bow and an arrow, and I tore up a boy's shirt and tied the ends of it to the arrow and doused it in some cheap cologne.
Oh, flaming arrows, then.
Well, I'd just seen this John Wayne movie.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a good idea at the time, Dave. It loses a lot in translation now after a few years looking back, but at the time it seemed like just a great idea. And I'd seen this movie where they died with a flaming arrow in their chest, and is the exuberance of youth and stuff, Dave. You understand?
Where did you go to school?
Abilene Christian College.
All right, let us do a commercial here, and then we'll be back, folks, with Randy. We're gonna take a look at you in the movie Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. Did you get along all right with Eddie?
I got along real well with Eddie. Of course, he's a lightweight. I do real well with smaller guys.
Yeah. And tell the folks what we're gonna look at here. You play
This is, I think this is the one with Richard Pryor and called Critical Condition.
Let me see. That's right. You're absolutely right. Whatever you want, Tex.
I thought you and I'd get along, Dave.
Yeah. This movie has not been released yet, right? This is, January 16th. All right. What are you doing here with Richard?
I play a sensitive role of a lad that's institutionalized, thinking he's black. And I'll tell you one thing about Richard Pryor. That's the funniest son of a gun God ever let live. Yeah. 24 hours a day, this guy is absolutely hilarious. And a class guy with it.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. And he's, we're going to see this now?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a few seconds from the motion picture Critical Condition with Richard Pryor and Tex. Critical condition. So you're doing some pretty big films here with Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and stuff. You got another one coming out soon? Working on something now?
Yeah, I got something coming out with Telly Savalas, Dirty Dozen 3, be out February 9th.
Yeah.
And I've got Police Academy 4, be out sometime in April.
So you're Mr. Big Shot all of a sudden, aren't you?
Well, I got a good jab for a white boy, if that's what you're talking about.
All right, well, I'm glad things are going great for you.
Thank you, Buster.
Good to see you again.
Oh,
Thank you.
pleasure.
Randall, text Cobb, folks. And we'll be back here. Okay. Now, Karen Kraft, the woman who was going to be on to sing, what was she singing, Paul?
Oh, she was going to do Stormy Weather.
Stormy
It was
Weather.
beautiful, too.
Yeah, beautiful. We ran out of time, but we'll have her back as soon as possible. No, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. Don't ruin everyone's fun here. My thanks to Carol Kane also, and of course, Randy Tex Cobb. Nice to see you again, Randy. Bill Wendell, Paul on the band, and of course, the studio audience tomorrow. Oh boy, get plenty of sleep tomorrow. Marv Albert and Hindu psychic Ostaro. Good night, everyone.